Here are some of the wildest and most mind-blowing conspiracy theories ever shared on the Joe Rogan podcast. We'll start with the bizarre, and as we go on, things only get crazier. Ancient civilization theory. An ancient civilization is a group of people who lived thousands of years ago and built advanced societies with cities, governments, languages, religions, and cultures of their own. These civilizations, like the Egyptians, Greeks, or Mayans, created amazing things: pyramids, temples, writing systems, and trade networks. The idea or theory behind how ancient civilizations formed is that once humans started farming and settling in one place, they began working together, creating rules, sharing knowledge, and organizing their communities. This teamwork led to the rise of powerful and complex societies. Even though many of these civilizations eventually disappeared, they left behind ruins, art, and writings that still teach us about their way of life today.
It's a behavior that are destructive with anything, whether it's with alcohol or cannabis or,
Yes.
sex or anything. People get in ruts.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't mean that the cannabis is bad. It means that you are on a bad mental path.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm not encouraging it for everybody because some people, it genuinely, biologically doesn't jive with them.
Yeah. But the fundamental thing is we as adult human beings need to take responsibility for our own lives and our own decisions. And we need not hand that responsibility over to governmental institutions, especially when it concerns something as intimate and personal as our consciousness. And my view is the ancient world had the right attitude to this kind of thing, and the modern world does not, and that we can sit down and learn a lot from the ancient world. A lot of people ask me, Hancock, you've been arguing that there's been a lost civilization in the human story, but what sort of civilization do you think it was? Well, one of the things I think is it was a civilization that used psychedelics. I think it was a civilization that emerged from shamanism, but did not stay at the hunter-gatherer stage, but that took the essence of shamanism and integrated it into a very different kind of civilization from our own, which pursued things in different ways. A lot of archaeologists have said to me, but we don't find any plastic bottles from the Ice Age. That means there was no advanced civilization during the Ice Age. Well, hang on. Maybe an advanced civilization might have decided never to get involved in plastic in the first place. Maybe there would have been a clear choice not to make plastic. Maybe they did things in completely different ways. Maybe they cultivated powers of the human mind that we dismiss and regard as completely unimportant. Woo-woo.
Yeah, this is the thoughts about Egypt, correct?
It's about Egypt and about other things. I mean, the specific example I give is above the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid are 5 further chambers. And these chambers are roofed and floored with granite beams that weigh about 70 tons each. And there are hundreds of them. And these 70-ton granite beams, which to put in context, a 70-ton beam is equivalent in weight to 35 large SUVs. These 70-ton granite beams have been elevated to a height of more than 350 feet above the ground and carefully and precisely placed in position. It is very hard for archaeologists to explain how that was done using purely leverage and mechanical advantage. You can say, perhaps they built a ramp and hauled the stones up the ramp. But then you have to confront basic laws of physics. You can't haul a stone weighing tens of tons up a slope that exceeds 10 degrees. Then you start doing the calculation. How long a ramp do I need with a 10-degree slope to get to 350 feet above the ground? And the answer is you need a fucking long ramp, which should still be there, because it couldn't have been a sand ramp. It would have collapsed under the weight of those stones. It had to be as massive as the pyramid itself. So this begins to seem like an absurd idea, the idea that is foisted on us by archaeology. Maybe the idea that they regard as absurd, namely that psychic powers were cultivated by ancient civilizations, that they could use powers of the human mind that we have allowed to lapse, maybe that idea deserves further consideration. We have gone down a path of leverage and mechanical advantage. We're used to relying on machines, but we hear anecdotal reports of people who have telekinetic powers, who can move things with their minds, of people who have telepathic powers. And our automatic reaction is to just dismiss all of that because science says it's impossible, because science regards consciousness as local to the brain and doesn't see how it can exert itself outside of that. But maybe we should open up to those possibilities, that we're dealing with a very different kind of culture that used techniques that we have allowed to lapse. And maybe we could wake those techniques up again. Maybe the ability of human beings to do almost superhuman things is resident within all of us, but sleeping.
Well, it's pure speculation that they use some sort of a telekinetic power, but it's
pure
absolute,
speculation.
But it's absolute that they did something that we don't understand. If you think about the distance between us and the construction, just the modern accepted construction dates of the Great Pyramid, it's more than 5,000 years ago, or close to 5,000 years ago.
Great Pyramid is supposed to be about 4,500 years old, yeah.
That's really old.
It's incredibly old, yeah.
To think that someone back then could do something that would perplex us today with modern machinery.
Yeah.
And that somehow or another they figured this out. It's almost like what they had done was leave behind something that was so stupendous, so monstrously impressive that it would transcend time.
Yeah.
And that you would have to look at it even thousands and thousands of years later and say, hey, like this defies conventional explanation. This is not a simple, and I've seen some of the conventional explanations of the construction of the pyramid, and they conveniently neglect those chambers above the king's chamber.
They do.
They conveniently neglect a lot of those massive stones.
Yeah.
And it's because it's one of those things you just go, oh, I don't know. What is this, Jamie?
They're the chambers
above
above the king's chambers, and each one of those floors consists of a row of 70-ton granite blocks that have been raised 350 feet above the ground. And not only that, but brought from Aswan in the south of Egypt, 500 kilometers south of the Great Pyramid. So,
if there's any time in history where you could go in a time machine and go back and observe, would that be the time?
I am just completely fascinated by the Ice Age at the moment.
If you had one shot to go back and see what it was like in some place, you wouldn't go to the construction of the Great Pyramids?
I think right now where I'd go is 12,800 years ago in the beginning of the Younger Dryas.
Just to see.
Because I think that's where the whole human story changes. I think that's where we change tracks from one path to another path. And following those cataclysmic events of the Younger Dryas between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, following those, the signs of civilization that we see emerging are not the beginnings of civilization. They're a restarting of civilization that had existed before the cataclysm. And for that reason, I would like to be present during that cataclysmic event, if only to satisfy myself that it was indeed a comet. You see, the one thing there's no dispute about anymore is that the Younger Dryas was a cataclysm. You can't argue about that. The megafauna that die off, the disruption of human activity that takes place at that time, the huge climate changes. This was a cataclysm by any standards. Where the argument still goes on is what caused the cataclysm. I vote strongly for comet, multiple fragments of a comet hitting the North American ice cap and hitting Greenland as well. But there are other researchers in the field, like my colleague Robert Schoch, who thinks that the sun is more involved. This is healthy. This is very, very healthy, that we should be approaching this problem from many different perspectives and trying to figure out what the fuck caused this extraordinary event that occurs at a pivotal moment in the human story. The end of the Stone Age, the beginning of the Mesolithic, the end of the Ice Age, the beginning of the current age of the Earth. And suddenly we see these signs of civilization appearing, and in places like Göbekli Tepe, those signs already include highly sophisticated knowledge. And that's why I feel we really need to investigate the Amazon. There are 3 places in the world which are really lacking in investigation right now. One of them is the Amazon, 5.5 million square kilometers, very little archaeology done. Another is the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert, tough place to work. I can understand why there's little archaeology done there, but the Sahara Desert was green during the Ice Age. It had a completely different climate regime. We should consider the possibility that missing parts of the human story are there. And then under the continental shelves, because sea level rose 400 feet. These are 3 domains that archaeology has largely not investigated, and it has largely not done so. They say, well, why would we spend the money on marine archaeology? It's much better to spend it on looking for shipwrecks rather than looking for signs of a lost civilization, because we archaeologists know there was no lost civilization. So that's the argument for the resources there, and the same with the Amazon, and the same with the Sahara Desert. The very places in the world that those amongst us who are charged with the responsibility of interpreting the past have not looked at are the very places we should be looking at.
Lost civilization. A lost civilization is an ancient society that disappeared long ago and left behind very few clues about who they were or how they lived. Unlike well-known ancient civilizations like the Egyptians or Romans, lost civilizations are mysterious because much of their history is missing, forgotten, or not fully understood. Some, like the Indus Valley Civilization, had advanced cities and systems, but we still can't read their writings. Others, like Atlantis, are only known through myths and stories. We're not even sure if they were real. The term lost civilization is used when a once thriving society seems to have vanished, leaving behind ruins, legends, or puzzles that researchers are still trying to figure out today.
WEF.
Yeah.
What people want there. Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you before, because I'm fascinated by Egypt, is when you had Randall and Graham on, Randall alluded to technologies that I've actually done some research, even though you shouldn't do your own research. I've done some research on and thought about how they move those fucking stones. And there's a lot of people with theories about using frequency to be able to move the stones. And Randall mentioned on that podcast that he'd been working with the company for like 7 years.
Yeah.
And that there was technology about to come out. There was actually somebody who did something similar in Florida, I believe, built a structure.
Oh, the Coral Gables. Yeah, the Coral Castle, rather.
Has anything come from that? Do you know?
No. I mean...
Because they still can't, I mean, they talk about, slave labor or log rolling, but these mega-ton, stones that were used to build the pyramids, like what they say, how it was moved and the time it would have taken and the manpower, to me is complete bullshit.
It's also how far they had to take them through the mountains.
Where the quarries were.
No machinery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's so immense and so incredible that it's there as a reminder that something was different.
But I don't think there's ancient technology like that could have been used.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure they had something, because they do find things that are indicative of drills, diamond tip drills, because they've cored in a way that had to be insanely high speed diamond tip drills that cored
stuff
into
that
granite.
We can
barely do.
Yeah.
And then it's just the sheer mass. I mean, the amount of stones, 2,300,000 stones in the Great Pyramid. And, they're perfectly aligned, a true north, south, east, and west. It's just the whole thing about the quarries being hundreds of miles away, the whole thing is nuts. It's not primitive people. It's super advanced people that did that. And it's super advanced people that lived in a society that's very different than what we think of as existed 10,000 plus years ago.
Well, speaking of the super advanced society, what do you think about, have you looked into the Tartarian stuff at all?
I was watching a video today about it. Yeah. It's a lot
I think
of
that's
kooks.
pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah, it is fascinating that there was an advanced society, but there's also a lot of kooks. A lot of kooks involved in that. But I think that if I was...
though. And I think that's some of the... Maybe some of that's controlled to keep people from looking at some of that stuff. But if you look at the World's Fair of the early 1900s, there's some really weird shit around that.
Like
about
what?
The structures that they built over them they were supposed to take down in some of these cities, about some of the technologies that were used in some of the architecture, and how some of that architecture isn't standard with many of the other buildings of the same era, what they were doing on top with free energy possibly on some of these buildings. It's pretty wild stuff.
So like free energy, like Tesla, what would Tesla...
Like they were able to extract energy from the atmosphere, that electricity for everybody. I think they had, and you can maybe bring something up, Jamie, but I believe they had mercury in these, was it copper, kind of balls on top of the buildings, and they figured out a way to extract energy just from the air. And,
really?
Yeah.
So where'd you read this?
Just online. A lot of interesting comments about it.
A lot of nuttiness. Marshall, get out of there, buddy.
There's a lot. I think there's a shred of truth in
he went over there and stole Carl's toy. You little thief. How dare you, buddy?
Jamie, you going to back me up on some of this Tartarian?
Yeah, he's going to try to find it. Is there like a really good, reliable source of Tartaria information?
I haven't. I mean, wouldn't Graham be one? Has he?
I don't know if he's into that. So what is the theory? The theory is that even more recently...
That there was more recent, yeah.
An advanced stream.
The theory is there was an advanced civilization that had certain technologies, and that some of the recent history is bullshit, and that the World's Fair built structures over the top of these.
Well, some of the World's Fair stuff can be explained by like Universal Studios style, like it was just facades to look, but they were covering certain buildings because people were coming to see stuff. That's just some of
the QAnon of architecture.
Of course. Anytime you want to discredit something, just put fucking QAnon
or MAGA. QAnon or MAGA. Those are great. 1908, architect Ernest Flagg completed the Singer Building in Lower Manhattan, a Beaux Arts showstopper made for the Singer Sewing Machine Company. From a wide base, a slender 27-story tower rose, topped with a mansard roof and a delicate lantern spire. Every inch dripped with sumptuous detail inside and out, vaulted roofs, marble columns with bronze trim, window mullions with spiral. I don't even know what a mullion is. With spiral fluting, the lobby was said to have a celestial radiance. A book written about its construction. For a year, it was the tallest building in the world at 612 feet and a celebrated landmark for decades after that, but not too much longer, despite its great height. The pencil-thin tower lacked office space. In the 1960s, the company sold it. Its ornate headquarters. Demolition proceeded in 1967. It's the tallest building to ever be peacefully demolished. Peacefully. Interesting. By any account, it's a fantastical tale. Once the tallest building in the world and a New York City icon, knocked down in just a handful of decades.
It's like the part at the bottom here, that adherence to the theory of belief. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So you need to find something about the top of these buildings, what they had.
Tartaria Rises. Tartarian-themed content is produced for YouTube videos that get picked over on Reddit. Our Tartarian Architecture sub, which began in 2018 December, has 3,300 members, though not everyone who posts and comments appears to be a true believer. A larger and more general sub that appeared around the same time, Our Tartaria, has 8,700 members. As conspiracy theories go, Tartaria remains obscure. Twitter user Cinema Shoebox brought it to many people's attention last year with this thread. A pseudoscience debunking writer, Brian Dunning. Oh, I remember Brian. Remember that guy? Recently devoted an episode of his podcast, Skeptoid, to the Tartaria story, which appears to have emerged in 2016 and 2017. Tartaria story.
This is where, then they tie in the
explaining a lot of the stuff
and stuff, but
I want to find the energy stuff that he was asking about.
Yeah.
I just think the architecture is pretty fascinating. Some of these.
Scroll back up.
Scroll.
I just you went a little too fast there. This guy wrote slightly more. I think it was one worldwide civilization, says Joachim Skar, a 26-year-old Norwegian who runs a Tartarian Meltdown YouTube channel. It was all based on unity, oneness, peace, love, and harmony. Okay. Which we don't see in today's society. Well, that is very utopian. Sure, I'd love to believe that was the case.
The Stoned Ape Theory. The Stoned Ape Theory is a speculative idea about human evolution, first introduced by ethnobotanist Terence McKenna in the 1990s. According to this theory, early human ancestors, while migrating across Africa and foraging for food, may have encountered psychedelic mushrooms. These mushrooms, containing the compound psilocybin, are believed to have altered brain chemistry in ways that encourage cognitive development, enhancing visual acuity, stimulating imagination, and potentially accelerating the emergence of language, culture, and abstract thinking. Proponents of the theory suggest that this psychedelic experience played a key role in transforming primitive hominids into early humans with higher consciousness. However, the theory remains highly controversial and is not supported by mainstream science.
Pay attention to McKenna's theory about the evolution of the human brain, of the Stoned Ape Theory.
I looked at it, but I didn't find it persuasive. And in fact, if you press Terence McKenna, he didn't find it entirely persuasive. It's an interesting speculation. It's kind of a mind game. I can see how psychedelics would influence the mind and create new ideas, new memes, and might contribute to language. But how does it get into the genes? That's what
the genes.
The genes, because he said it changed us at the genetic level. I see psychedelics as having had a profound effect at the level of cultural evolution, that there are lots of interesting innovations that people who had psychedelic experience introduced to our culture. We talked about religion earlier. That could be one. I had a wonderful interview with Stuart Brand, the founder of the Whole Earth Catalog. And his insight, he had this profound insight during a psychedelic trip on the roof of his house in North Beach, and he saw the curvature of the earth in a way he hadn't before. And he said, God, if we could have this is 1966, we had never seen a picture of the earth from space yet. And he said, if we had a picture of the earth from space and we could see it as this round spaceship, that would change everything. Because if you think of the earth as flat, as most of us instinctively do, it's endless. There's endless resources. You don't have to worry about limits in any way. But if we had that image, and he realized, I have to start a campaign to get NASA to turn the cameras around. They're on their way to the moon. Show us the Earth from space. And he said, I'm going to make a campaign. I know. And he says, this is on LSD. I'll make a button, very important medium in 1966. I'll make a button. And what should the button say? It should be a little paranoid to get people's attention. Why haven't they shown us an image of the Earth from space? Yeah, that's what he would do. And he started a campaign. He started selling these buttons. And the campaign got in the newspapers, and it goes viral, as viral as you could get in 1966. And 2 years later, NASA produced that image, and he put it on the Whole Earth Catalog, and that image galvanized the environmental movement. So it's those kind of memes that psychedelics introduces into culture, and that changes culture. That image changed culture. And I think there are hundreds of them. I mean, Steve Jobs talked about, his use of LSD is very important to his formative experience. And in fact, there's a whole tradition of computer engineers going back to the 50s using LSD that I wrote about in the book. So, but I don't see how we were selected genetically because of there was an advantage to the people who were taking a lot of psychedelics. That's where he loses me.
That's necessarily his
Maybe I'm misrepresenting it.
His theory is that it coincides with climate change and these lower hominids experimenting with different food sources. So as the rainforests receded into grasslands, they started experimenting by flipping over cow patties and finding grubs and perhaps even mushrooms that were growing on these cow patties. And his theory was that there's a bunch of different benefits. One, low doses of psilocybin have been shown to increase visual acuity, which
and it's given to hunting dogs in certain cultures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make you a better hunter, make you more in tune with what you're doing. That it would make you more. It would central nervous system arousal, including sexual arousal, make you more horny, which would make you
more productive,
procreate more often, and that the very unusual effect that psilocybin has on the mind could have led to language and could have also led to the expansion of neurons.
Language of the could be part of cultural evolution.
Sure.
Yeah.
The doubling of the human brain size, though, was the particular thing. That it coincided, according to McKenna, it's been... There's a lot of people that disagree with him. But his brother makes a very compelling case for it. His brother Dennis, who's still alive.
Yeah,
and he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. Yeah. He talked about it on this podcast. He talked about his take on the Stoned Ape Theory, scientifically, why he believes it's really what happened. But that it does coincide with the change in climate of these ape-like people trying out different things, and that the doubling of the human brain size over a period of 2 million years is like one of the greatest mysteries in the entire fossil record.
Yeah, but there are alternative theories. I mean, I wrote about one in my last book.
All coincide.
They may be. Cooking with fire can explain the increase in the brain size because you get more nutritional value from cooked food than raw food.
The throwing arm, the desire to hunt all these different animals, and the calculating all these different ways to do that, and communication.
Right.
I think there's
cooperation,
probably a bunch of coinciding factors.
Yeah, and it may well be that people were eating everything, right? Our ancestors, it's amazing what they ate. And no doubt they ate psychedelic mushrooms, and no doubt, I mean, he also believed that language was a form of synesthesia, in the way that synesthesia, you can smell a musical note or something like that you're taking a sound, a meaningless sound, and you're attaching it to a concept that maybe that happened on psilocybin. But
well, he had a bunch of ideas that never panned out.
He
Ridiculous
was,
ideas.
he was an incredibly creative person, and they're all, really interesting to think about. Some of them, I think you can probably discredit based on what we understand about genes and evolution, but others are just really provocative.
Well, that's where his brother comes in.
Yeah,
his brother's a scientist.
Yeah.
Strict scientist. Right. He doesn't tolerate any of the woo-woo, and
he's skeptical of some of his brother's ideas.
Oh yeah,
too.
openly. Yeah. I mean, loved his brother, but he was like, he said a lot of things that weren't really accurate.
But also Terence McKenna too would say, well, I'm just putting these ideas out there.
Well, the guy was a constant pot user. He was constantly doing psychedelics,
and a brilliant talker. He would have a podcast now, right?
Oh, for sure.
It would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure. I'd promote the shit out of it.
I would too.
Yeah, he was a fun guy to listen to talk. And there's a podcast called The Psychedelic Salon that my friend Lorenzo hosts that has pretty much every Terence McKenna lecture and speech he's ever done available for free. You can download it. And Lorenzo has taken these and digitally remastered them so the sound is better. And it's really awesome that he's got this resource. But the idea that these lower hominids experimented with psilocybin, and this was what advanced culture or advanced language, advanced their understanding of each other. It's a very, very compelling idea.
Yeah, it is. And I think, the way I think about drugs like psychedelics in evolution, in the same way like in genetic evolution, radiation causes mutations. And some of those mutations turn out to be really valuable. Purely by accident, some great new trait is introduced to the species, and it increases fitness, and that person or that individual lives on. In the cultural realm, psychedelics are like radiation. They're mutagens. They create change, variation, and that advances cultural evolution. All that variation, all those wild ideas, 99% of them are stupid and useless, I'll bet. But that 1% can change the world.
Yeah, fucking monkey was to figure out how to skin an animal and wear its skin. It had to be like in the monkey days, right?
It feels like it'd be a couple generations away from the monkey days, don't you think?
Maybe it was
monkeys, I just can't imagine a monkey doing that.
One mean motherfucking chimp, and they were going north, and there's one dude who always annoyed him, so he kills him with a rock and then uses the rock to take his fucking skin off and wears it to freak everybody else out. But then he realizes it makes him warm.
Oh, yeah.
And he can go a little further north.
Uh-huh.
It's like a movie.
Okay. I like it.
See the movie? Can you see that scene?
I can see that that's what the entire movie leads up to.
I wonder when the first monkey figured out he could kill an animal with like a tool, like the first, like Australopithecus or one of those primitive humans. When the first one was that stabbed something, like stabbed a rat or a rabbit with a stick, and went, holy shit!
Right, I can just use this tool.
Yeah.
What other tools can I make?
I'm gonna start eating.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat good. Because if you didn't have a weapon, how hard is it for a person to kill something with your hands? What are you even going to get? What are you going to catch? What the fuck can you catch with your hands?
Well,
you can't catch a squirrel.
You'd be
just your hands, no tools.
You'd be hunting and gathering mostly.
I
mean gathering, I would say.
Yeah, you'd be eating shit that you found on the ground.
Yeah. That's primarily what you would eat, and then once in a while you'd get something, an animal. But then you're right. They obviously had to figure out different ways of getting animals.
Well, it's one of the shifts that they think took place that allowed the human brain size to double over a period of 2 million years.
Oh, really?
Human brain size, apparently. I was listening to a Terence McKenna lecture on this once, and he was talking about how the human brain size doubled over the period of 2 million years. It's one of the biggest mysteries in the fossil record. And his idea was that they discovered mushrooms, and that the chimps over this period of time, or the monkey people, whatever the fuck they were, ancient hominids, had discovered mushrooms after the climate had shifted. And he backs it up. He did back it up. At least he's dead now. He backed it up with some climate data that we know from core samples and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He thinks that they experienced climate change where the rainforest had receded into grasslands, and that this gave birth to the rise of ungulates like cows and deer and things like that.
Yeah.
And they would shit. These mushrooms would grow on their shit, and then they've observed a lot of these monkeys in the wild picking up cow patties and looking for grubs and beetles underneath it.
Oh, I see.
And they think they might have experimented with the mushrooms, and that if they experimented with psilocybin mushrooms, a lot of things could take place once they realized that it was not just a viable food source, but also provided them with a bunch of different benefits. One being their vision. It increases visual acuity.
I know. It's so weird.
Especially in
It's
low
true.
doses. Yeah.
So
it would
crazy.
make them see things better. 2, it makes them hornier, makes them more communal, and it makes them more creative. And all those things possibly could have given birth to language and to a lot of other things. They also think it's possible that creativity could have enabled them to start hunting. That they started using tools and thinking and trying to figure out ways around stuff and trying to, try to figure out how to make an effective weapon to kill something at a distance. Like the more they're thinking and becoming creative, the more that stuff's enhancing them. And this period of 2 million years is like a pretty profound jump for the human brain size. They think some of that also came to do with our desire to kill things with weapons. That once we started hunting and eating meat, we got way more protein, more bioavailable protein. It was healthier for the animal, for the human animal. And then we also started to try to figure out other better ways to kill these animals, which made us even more creative and competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
And they think that all these factors might have taken place that turned us into a person.
That's pretty amazing. 2 million years. Yeah, it's just like a deviation.
Well, you know what's even crazier? 65 million years ago, we were like a mole.
Oh, yeah.
People were like a little shrew. That's our
right.
ancestor.
That's right. I remember that. What's the name of that thing?
I don't know, man.
I think it's the Snorfgarificus. Snorfgarificus.
I think you're right. Say it again. One more time, please. I'm going to write this down.
Snorfgarificus.
It was like a weird little mole thing.
Scrispicus. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's a little tiny rodent.
Yeah, because I did a podcast, or no, I toured with...
What is it, Jamie?
That doesn't say.
Oh, there it is.
I don't know.
The alias of, what is that word? Eutherian mammals was a small rat-like creature depicted in this illustration that lived 145 million years ago. Wow. In the shadow of the dinosaurs. So that rat-like creature apparently survived the earthquake or the asteroid impact. I don't think that's the thing, though.
There's a formal name for it. I know because I was on a podcast and they were one of the segments of it. They talked about this thing.
But the only reason why I'm skeptical is because it says 145 million years ago. But I guess maybe they survived the impact. Scroll back up to the top of the title says. These rodent-like creatures are the earliest known ancestors of humans, whales, and shrews. Oh, okay. That's what's even more crazy. Like, we used to be a whale. It's like, or our ancestor, we shared a common ancestor, I should say.
Yeah, we went into the sea and then stayed on land.
That fucking rat became a whale. What?
Maybe that's it.
Eutheria, there it is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That turned into a person, folks. Think about that when you're setting your rat traps.
I know.
100 million years from now, rats might be some super superior human form.
I think that's very possible.
But I mean, I get why Christians are skeptical now. I'm like, what do you show me your work? God made this. God didn't. I was not a rat. I was not a rat, sir.
The shining moon landing theory. The shining moon landing theory suggests that the Apollo 11 moon landing was faked, claiming that the lighting and reflections in the photos and videos show signs of tampering. Proponents argue that the lunar surface should not have reflected light the way it did, with some insisting that the module and astronauts appeared unnaturally bright. They point to the lack of stars in the photos, the way the shadows fell, and how the flag seemed to ripple as evidence that the event was staged. Critics of the theory argue that these points are misinterpretations of how lighting and photography work in the unique lunar environment, where the lack of atmosphere and lower gravity causes light to behave differently than on Earth. Despite decades of evidence and scientific consensus confirming the moon landing, these conspiracy theories continue to persist.
I remember that the first one I ever saw as a kid was The Shining, and that's still
holds up.
Terrifying
still holds
moments.
up. That's an interesting one, right? Because Stephen King didn't like it.
Yeah, that makes sense because it is wildly different from it's a huge departure from the novel.
Yeah.
So I can imagine if you're an artist and then someone takes your artwork and they completely change it in many different ways.
They changed it a bunch of ways, but they kept it a bunch of ways too. Mm-hmm. It became like a collaboration between him and Kubrick because it was clearly his original idea, but he wanted, I believe, Stephen King wanted that character to go crazy. He didn't want him to have this fucking edge, like right from the beginning. Like Jack Nicholson had an edge, like right from the beginning, and then became insane, and then became.
Well, I know what it's like, to be an alcoholic who just stopped drinking, and I think you have that edge almost from the get-go.
Yeah,
a little bit, but I mean, Jack's Jack.
That movie was so good.
It was top 10 all-time fave for me.
That's what's crazy. It's like someone needed to tell Stephen King, like, I know it wasn't the same thing, but god damn, it was good. It was so good. Dude, when those little girls are in the hallway and the fucking blood's coming out of the elevator, holy shit, that's a good movie.
So many great moments. I love it.
And back then when it came out, like, people don't understand. Like, The Shining is, like, what is that? 82 or something like that?
1980, I think.
Is it?
I think so.
Is that what it is? Yeah. So 1980, people, you've got to understand. We're talking about a whole different world.
Yeah.
There's no special effects. If there are they're not very good. They're all, like, clunky
you
looking.
Had Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, but it's clunky.
Yeah.
The special effects are clunky. I guess Empire Strikes Back is pretty fucking dope.
And then Alien was 79.
That's right. All right.
But that's it.
Argument's falling apart.
Blade Runner was 82. So there's really not much else, though. But there's a lot of clunky.
So they did this movie with just all
sets.
all of the different crazy moments, like that bathroom moment with the axe coming through the door. There was so many of those moments. The moment with the old lady.
Because Kubrick was a fucking master at creating suspense and using the sets and the color contrast. Like, just the color patterns are unsettling. And the fact that he used those twins they weren't twins. There were just little differences. That makes it unsettling. There's so many different ways.
Do you know he used to do complex mathematics for fun? That's how he unwind.
What a genius.
He was a trippy dude,
He is
man.
by far, I think, the greatest director of all time.
Well, he definitely is one of them, and one of the most unique ones. There's a crazy conspiracy theory connected to The Shining and the moon landing.
Yeah, I heard about the moon landing.
Yeah, it's all about the number on the door is the exact same amount of thousands of miles, 237. And it's 237,000 miles away.
I heard
but it also,
that,
by the way, it varies. See, that's the problem with that argument, is that like the distance between the Earth and the Moon is not constant. I think it moves a little bit. So I think it goes as far as 265,000 feet out, or miles rather, 265,000 miles out, and it goes to 237. But I think it varies. I think it goes like this. I think it has like an elliptical orbit around the Earth a little bit. Maybe I made that up. Is that true?
Yeah, it sounds accurate. Sorry, I was in the middle of reading the 237 stuff.
Yeah, I heard it was also possibly about Native Americans, how the hotel was built on an ancient Indian burial ground, and even Shelley Duvall sort of looked Native American. You could hear Native American music playing in the opening credits.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's many layers to it.
Yeah, he's just a brilliant man. He was a brilliant man.
The little kid did have an Apollo 11 sweatshirt on.
Yeah, that's true. He did have an Apollo 11.
I mean, that's pretty on the nose.
I just remember in the back room, in the stock room, there was like a can of a product with a giant. It was like Geronimo's head on there. I'm sure that.
Dude, there's so much to that. There's probably many layers. Kubrick is not going to operate on one layer.
No,
he's probably going to have a bunch of weird shit in there.
I mean, look at 2001. What a mind fuck!
Oh my god. What a mind fuck.
Yeah.
Well, there was so much of his work. And he's the guy that the conspiracy theorists, when they get the most crazy, when they really want to dive into who did it, they think it was all Kubrick. That Kubrick literally filmed the fake moon landing, uploaded it to the American TV satellites.
If anyone could do it, it'd be him. He'd be the guy I would get to do it.
Can you imagine if that was really what happened?
I've heard all
these years.
I remember hearing all the fucking conspiracy theorists about the Illuminati killing him because he made yeah.
Well, they were worried he was going to open his fucking mouth.
Tell
about the moon landing.
Oh, no.
That's what it was.
No, because he made fucking
keep his fucking
eyes
mouth
wide shut.
That too. That was his last one. They're like, enough. This guy's getting too close.
Because I think he died like a week after that movie came out.
Of course he did.
That's fucked up.
That's how they roll.
Morphic resonance theory. Morphic resonance is a wild theory that suggests once an animal learns something, like solving a maze, other animals across the world can learn it faster too. even without direct contact. It's like animals might share information through some unseen connection. Some experiments have shown that rats in different places could solve the same maze quicker after others have learned it. This theory challenges what we think we know about animal behavior, suggesting that there could be ways animals communicate or share knowledge that we can't yet fully understand.
But there's a very bizarre study that they've done where there's a concept called morphic resonance, and the idea is that once one animal learns this, the other animals will learn it easier, and that this is scientifically proven, and that the idea is that there's some sort of a sharing of information that is not local and that we don't totally understand. So the concept is, the way it's been proven is that rats on one side of the country, if they go through a maze, the rats on the other side of the country will go through the maze quicker. The exact same maze. See if you can find that. So they don't know what this is. Like, I think we have a very naive belief that the senses that we have recognized, all of them, whether they're sight, sound, touch, taste, whatever they are, this is it. This is all that's available. And that the concept the idea is that there might be something that we're missing or something that we really, we as dumb, blind human beings in terms of our ability to see things, we don't have the ability to tune in to what these animals can tune into.
I think there's a huge portion of our brain that we never touch. And I think animals are more tuned in. I think in many ways, many species are smarter than us just because they can sense their environment more acutely.
Yeah, maybe smarter is not the right word.
Maybe
but
not.
There's something. Rat learning and morphic resonance. Yeah. So according to the hypothesis, formative causation, there's no difference in kind between innate and learned behavior. Both depend on motor fields given by morphic resonance. The hypothesis, therefore, admits a possible transmission of learned behavior from one animal to another and leads to testable predictions which differ not only from those of the orthodox theory of inheritance, but also from those of the Lamarckian theory and from inheritance through epigenetic modifications of gene expression. So animals of an inbred strain are placed under conditions in which they learn to respond to a given stimulus in a characteristic way. They are then made to repeat this pattern of behavior many times. X hypothesized the new behavioral field, which will be reinforced by morphic resonance, will not only cause the behavior of the trained animals to become increasingly habitual, but will also affect, though less specifically, any similar animal exposed to a similar stimulus. The larger the number of animals in the past that have learned the task, the easier it should be for the subsequent similar animals to learn it. Therefore, in an experiment of this type, it should be possible to observe a progressive increase in the rate of learning, not only in the animals descended from trained ancestors, but also in genetically similar animals descended from untrained ancestors. This is pretty wild stuff.
It's pretty wild, yeah.
So it just speaks to this. I think we naively look at our senses as being the only ones that are available. There's obviously some kind of communication that transpires between animals that allows them to hunt in packs, right? Particularly wolves.
Right.
Like, they have strategies.
Yes.
They do things. Like, they know how to corner animals. They know how to funnel them into, like, pinch points. They do it on purpose, and they seem to be aware of what they're doing through whether it's gestures or pheromones or something that we're just guessing on. But they're accomplished at it. It's not like a singular individual event that you can point to, like maybe that was just dumb luck. They ran the deer through this area and the other wolves just happened to be there. No, they have specific tasks where they have wolves that'll get on the top of the ridges and let themselves be known so that they get these animals running. And then the other wolves are ahead of them. And then they have wolves that follow behind them.
The Yellowstone's been a great place to observe hunting. I mean, when I was working up northwest Montana, it's heavily forested. We almost never got to watch wolves chasing prey unless we were in the airplane. But in the Lamar, you got scopes and everybody's watching it. And I've seen some pretty incredible chases. And there's in some packs, certain individuals are the chasers, the younger animals, and some of the individuals are the coup de grace. They go in for the kill after the animal's been tired. And I guess there was some older animals that are too valuable potentially to risk being injured early on, but they join in the chase and they know how to kill an animal. So, and one thing I've always wondered, I don't know if this is with the morphic resonance, but that's something different maybe, but I've always wondered when wolves were first walking down from Canada and dispersing from Glacier before wolves were reintroduced, and there was a very thin population of wolves out there, how do they know where to go? Right. For example, there was a wolf pack in the 9 Mile, it's a river drainage, outside of Missoula, and this pair of wolves had formed a mating system, and they had a litter of pups. The female was poached on Memorial Day, which is, those pups are born in middle April, so they were pretty young. They were 5-6 weeks old. They were still dependent on mom, and the concern was that the dad wouldn't be able to raise those pups because he's got to go out and hunt, and they're just being weaned and blah blah blah. Well, 2 weeks after the female was dead, my colleague Mike, who was working down there, says, "Hey Diane, are you missing any collared wolves from Glacier?" I said, "Yeah, I'm missing several that I don't know where they went." He says, "'Cause I just had a collared wolf show up here and join the 9 Mile male." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, here's my list of frequencies of the missing wolves that had been missing." And he ran through the receiver and listened, and one of those wolves was one that I'd caught in Glacier and disappeared 6-7 months earlier. So she wandered around in not cyberspace but mountain space, trying to look for a place to fit in, and all of a sudden when this female gets shot, boom, she's there to fill in the slot.
Wow.
How does that happen? And that happens in Yellowstone too, where one of the breeding animals will be killed, and very soon after a wolf of unknown, well, there they know a lot of the wolves, but a wolf will just show up, the right gender, the right age, and potentially bond and start a new pack. How do they know? And I guess all I can say is with that, there's scent. The wolf smelling the urine and the scat can detect all kinds of things hormonally, and the dominance of an animal. If the female went missing, all of a sudden they won't smell it anymore, and maybe it's a female coming in and she knows it. But geographically, how do they know to migrate?
Right.
200 miles and show up exactly when the other wolf disappears.
Well, they've been trying to figure out forever what's going on with birds, and how birds, like sandhill cranes, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, Canadian geese. Like, what's going on? Like, how are these birds figuring out these incredible migration paths?
Right. It's amazing to me. So have you ever heard of the book called World on the Wing by Paul, I think the last name is Wiedenhouse something. It's about the world of migration. It is mind-boggling. If you like to read nature stuff and science, it's written so anybody can enjoy it. You don't have to be a scientist. But it's fascinating and full of facts about the world of bird migration and how they get places. And like a particular important flat in China that was critical habitat for a group of birds suddenly gets developed, and it's like the wintering ground for 500,000 of these birds or whatever it was. And suddenly, where do they go?
Right.
I don't know.
Migratory birds are very fascinating.
Oh, I know. And
like, what are they following, and what GPS do they have in their little
Hitler conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory around Hitler's death suggests he didn't die in his bunker in 1945, like history says. Some people believe he escaped to South America and lived there in secret for years after the war ended. This idea gained attention from shows like Hunting Hitler, which explored the possibility that Hitler had help from loyalists to flee Germany. The theory is based on reports of Nazi officials seen in South American countries, strange documents, and unconfirmed sightings. Supporters argue that it makes more sense than the official story because his body was never 100% confirmed to be Hitler's. While most historians dismiss this as fantasy, the theory still pops up, keeping the mystery of Hitler's final days alive in popular culture.
Oh, he's unique.
What is Finding Hitler all about? This is a show that you're on, and it's on A&E? Is that what it's on?
Yeah, A&E is the parent network. It airs on History Channel, and we just had our 3rd season that just finished airing.
What's the thought process behind this? Is it legit? Because a lot of people are like, Finding Hitler, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
They found Hitler, he died.
Yeah, I mean,
not really.
We don't know.
Right.
That's. I mean, this isn't like Ancient Aliens. This is They declassified a bunch of documents. Both the Israelis, the British, and the Germans and Americans in the past 20 years have been consistently declassifying documents. And there were a bunch of specifically FBI documents that we were spending millions and millions of dollars actively searching for Hitler after the war. as was...
Really?
Yeah, like millions of dollars. Like Hoover was like, no, send more FBI agents to South America, to North Africa, go to the Canary Islands, go to Spain, trying to find out where this guy went. Tons of real FBI documents with real leads, with real informants, some first eye accounts saying that they physically... So anyways, that's the show, is us trying to find out, sift through reality and the fiction of the allure, the mystery of that asshole.
So what's the official story? The official story is that he killed himself, right?
Yep.
He killed himself in the bunker with Ava Braun.
Yep.
And is there any photographic evidence of his death or anything?
Yeah. So what the Russians got the body and they got his skull. And when they brought it back to Moscow, nobody has ever been able to independently verify who and what this body is. They let one genetic test occur, and the body with the bullet holes that they said was Hitler, and have said, and that's the narrative, that's the story, that's all the eyewitness accounts that are even in the vicinity of collaborating with each other and corroborating each other's testimony. Like the closest version, because none of it seems to be very accurate, is that, okay, here's Hitler's skull, and when they did the genetic testing, it's that of a 35-year-old woman. So they're like, oh, well, this isn't Hitler, but they've said for the past 80 years that this is Hitler. So, okay, first, before we start throwing stones at Russia, let's go back to 1945, April, in Berlin. You have the Allies coming in, wrecking shop, dropping bombs, blowing everything up they can in every single which way. You have the Russians coming in from the opposite direction. They don't even have enough guns to arm all their soldiers. So if they have 200 guys, or 200,000 guys, they have 100,000 guns. If the guy in front of you dies, you just pick up his gun. That's what's happening in April of 1945 in Berlin. So the noose is tightening. There is it is chaos, anarchy, pandemonium. This is hell on earth, is Berlin, 1945. So I don't know if you could get a real story, the way that we do it now, where we have, this forensic experts that come in and document everything, and we look at all the different testimonies, say this is exactly how, it's not CSI. This is 1945 Berlin. It's crazy. So I don't know.
So there was no absolute proof.
No.
And a lot of Nazis did escape and go to South America.
The majority of anyone with power. The Nuremberg trials were not a witch hunt, but it was to close a chapter so we could start moving forward with communism. That's what it was. The threat of fascism, the threat of Hitler, the threat of killing all the Jews, the threat of world domination by the Nazis, that threat's gone. What's the next threat?
Communism.
It's communism.
Right.
So that had to be a closed chapter of our history so we could focus our resources and our efforts to what inevitably was going to, the wall goes up. We have East and West Berlin. We're already looking at Korea. This happens almost overnight.
Right, very quickly.
When Patton's like, no, homies, we need to go all the way to Moscow. This is not the end of our war. And we didn't listen to him. We then have been, fighting communism for the past 75 years.
So the ones with power that went to South America, I know a bunch of them went to Argentina, but they think they went to Honduras and a few other places. Mm-hmm. Where do they think they wound up?
So what you had in South America, both Chile and Argentina back-to-back had fascist regimes. You had Perón, who was part of the Nazi party starting all the way back into the mid-30s. He's the president of Argentina. So the Red Cross... they were there was about 3 different rat lines that guys were able to successfully get out of Europe into South America. And there's no question that we're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands of high-ranking Nazis made it there.
Tens of thousands?
Tens of thousands. And I'm not talking like little soldiers. I'm talking high-ranking Nazis. Officers, guys like Joseph Mengele and Adolf Eichmann. These are the most disgusting, despicable humans to exist at the time. If Hitler is dead, Joseph Mengele is the guy that would take syringes full of blue ink and inject them you have blue eyes, Joe, or you have brown eyes. Let me see if I can make them blue.
Oh, wow.
And then take twins and start torturing them to see if one would feel the pain. That's Joseph Mengele. I mean, that's the guy that then in South America was helping high-ranking Argentinians have abortions, and he set up, have you seen the movie Colonia?
No.
About Colonia Dignidad, which is, if you're listening right now, I almost warn you not to Google it, because it was a torture camp that was started by Joseph Schaefer, a Nazi, and Joseph Mengele, the doctor of death that escaped trial in Nuremberg and made it at the behest of Perón into Argentina. He set up the hospital at Colonia Dignidad, which was another safe haven for more Nazis in South America. Golda Meir and Ben Gurion, the presidents of Israel, they took the gloves off and they were just sending assassins to try to find these people and kill them. But what you got in South America were isolated German-only communities. You could go into Bariloche, Argentina, and I'd be like, "Buenos dias, amigos," and they're like, "Guten Morgen." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I meant good morning. Yeah, sorry, it's 2017, right? I thought we spoke Spanish here."
So, in 2017, you were there, and they were speaking German.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, I don't look very. I might look more European than I do. So it's just them seeing me walking down the street and be like,
"Wow."
Yeah. And there's tons of communities. I mean, if you go to Colonia Dignidad, which is now called Villa Bavaria, the Bavarian village, it is only German.
Whoa.
In the center of Chile, in the mountains of Chile. Like there's no Spanish being spoken there. It is exclusively German.
And these are the descendants of Nazis.
Powerful Nazis.
Holy shit. And this is going on right now.
Yeah. If you look at the second generation, there's a bunch of... So it was a huge problem for Chile that they tried to hide for years. And they got so much power from the torturing that they did at Colonia Dignidad on a whole bunch of other high-ranking South American dictators that they are almost untouchable. And this is... I mean, you'd blow your mind if you look into this, Joe. You'd love it. But... the second generation, the kids, like the grandkids, sometimes they're even more fanatical than the original generation. Have you ever seen this? Where like if somebody's away from, like when you travel abroad, man, it's so cool to get into the culture and get into the food and get into the, like you're dancing this style and you love the flag and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to a soccer game because we don't go to soccer games in America. And then I'm gonna go, but then maybe after like 2 months, you kind of miss home, and then like a year, like you really miss home. And then 10 years, like you really, really miss home. And you see the same thing in the United States where it's not really a perfect assimilation. It's not the melting pot where you see generations that are espousing to be more like their ethnic heritage than they are American. They're flying the Irish flag and like, I'm Irish. Well, it's just times 1,000 with these communities because they're exclusively German.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Kind of weird.
So exclusively German and really missing home.
Yeah. Yeah. So
70 years later.
The second generations I was talking about, some of them came to the United States and were high-ranking white supremacists that are now in jail, in prison, for their racial crimes.
And they came out of South America.
They came out of Colonia Dignidad. They came out of Bariloche. They came out of Cordoba. They came out of Misiones. They came out of, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy. So that's the show, Hunting Hitler.
Fucking A, man.
It's a trip.
How many people are we talking about all told in South America that come out of this? I mean, tens of thousands went there, but how many German communities and how big are they?
Yeah, we maybe have 50 German communities.
50? How many people, if you had to guess?
A few 100,000.
Holy shit. A few 100,000 descendants of Nazis.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And man, it's weird when you walk into somebody's parlor and it's like you're stepping back in time into Europe. Like I'm walking in, it's 2017 and I'm walking in Buenos Aires, Argentina into somebody's parlor and all of the tile is European and all the style and all the art is very German. You know, we have like deers and like not like red stags. We're talking German everything, things that Hitler loved. And that's the style and that's everything. And then they come out and like with white gloves, they're holding their grandfather's memory box. And inside of it are his war medals from, you know, when he was in the SS or when he was, and it is the respect, I don't even know the
reverence.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's like this is a gift from the Pope that they're holding in their hands. White gloves. No, I can't. First of all, Tim can't touch it. But I can appreciate it. And then they tell me the story of every single one of these things and how he got there, and how he then went and worked for the Buenos Aires News.
You can't touch anything.
No, they wouldn't. No, because I'm.
You're dirty.
I'm dirty.
Dirty American.
Look at this.
You're too brown.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
So we followed the first 2 seasons. It was really just unraveling the rumors of what happened to Hitler. The 3rd season was my favorite because I actually got to do real work. They said, okay, I got to the 2nd season. I got to bring in more special forces guys, a CIA targeter, Nadia, who helped my unit kill Zarqawi in 2006. This is the team that is now looking at real evidence, trying to figure out, okay, how did we find bin Laden? How did we find Zarqawi? We looked at their associates and we looked at how they moved. We looked at how they communicated. We looked at what routes they were using to get to and from places. And then we just started tightening the noose. And that's exactly what we did in this 3rd season was, okay, let's start following the Adolf Eichmanns. Let's start following the Joseph Mengeles. And let's start following the Skorzynskis. Hitler's personal bodyguard that was a colonel in the SS that went on to work for everybody after the war fighting. I mean, fascists do not like communists. So this guy was working for everybody to include the CIA fighting fascism in South America or fighting communism as a fascist in South America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Whoa.
Creepy stuff.
Whoa.
Yeah. So hunting Hitler.
Are there any legitimate eyewitness accounts of Hitler in South America? Or potentially legitimate?
Absolutely potentially.
Whoa.
Yep. Eyewitness accounts. I saw him get off a boat. I saw him meet here. And if it was just some person saying it, it's almost meaningless.
Right.
But if you look at the context of who this person is, the wealth that they have that they shouldn't have, like, can you explain how you got so rich in 2 generations? You know, like, okay, your grandpa got here from Germany in 1946. That's weird. And he's on a legitimate visa with an Argentinian passport. Also weird. And now he's a war refugee that's now worth millions of dollars. How does this work? But people, and then this is the hard part, people want to be connected to significant events, and especially in small rural areas of the world, developing areas. Like there's so little happening. They want to be attached to something massive. And like the fact that they saw a U-boat land on this beach and the hatch opened, and you know these cars were sitting there and they were doing Morse code, and this guy gets off and he had this little mustache. You're like, well, but U-boats can't beach. That's not how that works.
Right.
You know,
right.
But you know what they're trying to do. They just want to be connected.
Yeah.
So, and now we're removed 70 to 80 years from the facts. It has been painful to try to use real science, real investigative tools to try to sift through this lore, you know?
What do you think happened? I mean, you've been studying this for how long now?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
If you had a guess, if you had like $1 million, you got to put it on one side or another. Did he go there?
Yeah.
Whoa. Jesus Christ.
I would say, man, it's and that's the first time I've ever said it flat out like that. What I want to say is the way history is written is wrong. That's clear. There's no way that we can say he died on this day. This is what happened. Here is his body, and
so
that's what
the physical proof is for sure. The woman that head that they were saying was Hitler is definitely not Hitler.
It was absolutely not Hitler. That's a fact.
So they don't have Hitler's body.
So then our other option was, okay, is it Eva Braun's? Did they just grab the wrong body, right? So there are still descendants of Eva, and we tried to have them allow us to do it. Then we tried to go through like,
and they can get DNA off of the skull?
Yeah.
There's meat on it?
No, it's like a tooth. Yeah.
Okay.
And but they wouldn't consent to it. So then we tried to do, like where people have like the tree, their ethnic tree.
Yeah.
What is those websites called?
23andMe?
Yeah. There's like a bunch of them.
Right.
We tried to go that route, but
they wouldn't consent to it.
No.
The Eva Braun's family.
No. They just want it gone.
They just don't want to.
Yeah. They were super pissed that we even found them.
I'm sure.
Which was really hard.
Just hold them down, get them to spit in a bucket.
Yeah. I know.
I mean,
or pull their trash and pull stuff out of there. No, I would totally not do that.
Definitely not do that.
But
I mean, that's how they caught the Golden State Killer, right? It was off of a cigarette butt.
Yeah. They
got DNA off a cigarette butt.
So history's wrong.
Wow.
For it to be black and white like that. And
fuck, man.
And again, if you go back to 1945, we needed scientists. We needed every single German electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, aerospace, anything.
Yeah.
You're on the V2 program. We want all of you because now it's a race. It's a race. We have the bomb. Now we need delivery systems. Now we need to get to the moon. Now we need to, like all of those things are real time. It's a war of dollars and a war of science. And we got all those scientists.
Yeah.
The Russians didn't.
Well, they got some.
Some, not very many.
Operation Paperclip was what brought over what Werner von Braun, who was, when you talk to Jews that were in Berlin during the time that Werner von Braun was running his rocket program there, he would hang the 5 slowest Jews in front of the rocket factory in Berlin just to give everybody motivation to work harder.
Yeah.
It was the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that if Werner von Braun was alive today, they would prosecute him for crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
He was a Nazi, straight up Nazi. And there's apologists that say, no, he was a scientist. He was forced into doing that. Like, that's like, okay. He's a Nazi.
Yeah.
There's photographs of him wearing Nazi garb, hanging out with Nazis. His rocket factory killed Jews. Like, these are all undeniable facts.
Except the war ends and they're not Nazis anymore.
Exactly.
That's not how that works.
Exactly. But they were forgiven because they came over and contributed to our rocket program.
I'm not that good of a human. I don't have that in me. I don't have that okay.
It's slippery,
you're forgiven.
man.
If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and watch my other videos. I'm Mickey V. Have a great day.